All righty. Did you guys miss me already? I know it's been a while that I've been coming at you from the Fearless Netpreneur show. You know what happened. You know what happened. I got to fight for my country. I got to get involved in politics for the last 9 months. We have been distracted from the business of life, from the business of making money as we chase a better Nigeria. But it's all over now. And your man is back and back hard with the Fearless Netpreneur show, and we are starting it back up with a bang. Today, I have an amazing man in the studio with us as we begin to deal with the issues of life, which is how do you survive in business and life. Today, I've got something doozy for you, all right? We are going to be having a gentleman. Let me tell you a little bit about the guy we are going to be having today. So you know I'm not playing, all right? The same way I brought some of the topmost politicians to you during politics days, we are now going to be going all business. I'm no longer into the politics thing. My role is over. Now we build a nation. But today, our guest is the distinguished Lekan Bashua. You're going to be seeing him in a minute. This man is an alumnus of the historic Morehouse College in Atlanta. He has lived in 11 cities on 3 continents. And yes, he does speak 5 languages, including English, French, German, Yoruba, and common sense. A lot of people don't even know that common sense is a language. Lekan Bashua is the founder of F3, Founders, Friends, and Funders, a global ecosystem that enables any founder anywhere to find their first true believers. F3 is a modern talent agency to undiscovered startup talent from often overlooked places, built on top of an AI-powered system. We're going to be talking a lot of AI today. Even that's what is raining, right? Yep, I brought you the right guy. Lekan is an accomplished product and business leader, a 4-time startup founder himself. So a lot of our discussion is going to be about how to start your business, how to get funding for it, how to attract angel investors. He speaks to more than 100 founders weekly because he has a business that is their job is to help founders find money. And he himself has invested in and advised and mentored over 400 startups. He's currently a product management leader at Google. Yeah, that same Google, right? He works there, helping to build their hyperscale marketplace platform. He has spent his 20-year-plus career at companies like Steelchase, Tunstone, Convene, FlexSpace, and Space HQ. Wow. He has researched, planned, designed, built, launched, and managed various types of businesses in that space, including hardware, software, physical, e-commerce, and marketplaces. So when we get into it today, you know the man is robust, but we're going to test all that today. He enjoys brainstorming with designers, reviewing metrics with business leaders, and diving into technical details with engineers. He's very adept, and you're going to see in a few minutes, at creating actionable, detailed, and result-driven product roadmaps that can scale. Lekan loves building, managing, nurturing, and retaining talent. Of course, he currently lives and works at Google Inc. in Atlanta as his day job. Above all, and this is the part I love most of his resume, is an original native of Lagos, Nigeria. Shh. And that's the start I love the most about him, because original indigenous of Lagos are indeed very rare to find in the constantly evolving metropolitan city of Lagos. I give you guys, welcome with me, Mr. Lekan Bashua of F3 Ventures. Say hello to my people, my friend.
It's good to see everybody. Thank you for having me. Your check is in the mail.
There you go.
That is some kind of intro. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. I see several people on the chat already. David Jones, good to see you. Guys, these are some of the badass guys you are going to be seeing on this show in the coming days, because we are starting so powerfully. David Jones, I see you. It says, let's go. Regina Biame says, hello, sir. See you, John Tubon. Thank you so much for coming in. I see Irene Addin from London. My sister, good to see you. And I see Bolade Kemi, Bukola Derami Ladigbolu. Say it is well. Good to see you guys. And also, we are live on so many platforms right now, even though you are seeing the one that is going to my handle on Facebook. We are live on LinkedIn. We are live on about 5 different business pages of Facebook that I own. We are live on YouTube. We are live on Clubhouse. So the whole world is looking at Lekan tonight. But I assure you, it's going to be worth it. We are in the presence of a man that has been there, is young, but he's done a lot of stuff. On a personal note, when I finally met him in Atlanta, his amazing warmness and ability to solve problems that he didn't even know the depth of it just blew me away. So thank you so much, Lekan, for being our guest today. All right?
Thank you.
Guys, you know how it's going to go. You guys know how it's going to go down. All right? So let's just get to it. I woke up this morning. You know, on this show, we don't ask your wife, ask your children, but I'm sure they're all fine, right?
They are.
They're fine. All right?
Yeah.
Madam, we thank you for releasing Daddy to us today, but we are here to do business. Okay. I woke up this morning. I saw that something called Threads has just changed the world of me. Okay? This app launched by Instagram has done over 40 million the first 24 hours, I'm told. Last time I checked 8 hours ago, it was 32 million. But they're telling me it has crossed 40 million now. Now, obviously, we now hear that Elon Musk is now trying to take Facebook to court for plagiarism. So that's your very first question. Sorry about that. So what is your thought about the legal fireworks by Elon Musk to fight Zuckerberg over plagiarism and copyright? What do you think this is all about? Is that something real here? I know you are not a lawyer. Or is this just executives, billionaires fighting? What do you say?
It's billionaires fighting. You know, the first rule we have in startups is you do not sue anybody when it comes to, okay, something's up with the audio. The first rule we have, right, in software is you do not, you know, you can't sue anybody for software infringement, really. I mean, you can, but you don't do it. Software is the easiest thing to copy. In fact, we're in a world now where most likely copying software is going to happen. If you have an idea, if you don't execute, most likely people will copy your idea before you get the product out the door. Sorry, I think there's something going with that.
Yeah, I think maybe it's your Clubhouse stuff, right?
I'm muted on Clubhouse now.
Okay, that's why I think that is better so that they can hear you direct from my own phone. Go ahead.
Okay. So, you know, suing people for infringement on software is such a bad idea. In fact, most likely we could go to 50 features that Twitter itself copied from other people. So this is one of those things where Elon, at his typical thing, which is to knee-jerk reaction, make a decision that is rash, it's not going to work. The best thing to do is to fix the product. You know, he fired 80% of his staff, and they stopped innovating on product. And I think the best thing they can do for Twitter, it is still a great product. Twitter is an amazing product that lots of people love. They should just double down on fixing the product and innovating. And they can forget about Facebook. Facebook will do what it needs to do. For me, Elon is one of those geniuses where he's been incredible on the hardware piece. If he just focuses on what he knows best, which is focused on product, and then forget all the politics and, you know, meanness that's out there, and just focus on product, and everything will be fine with Twitter. I just wish he would focus on product.
All right. So you just think that, well, I don't blame the man. When they bring out a competitor that racks up 40 million in less than 24 hours, you got to be worried because LinkedIn took 1 year to get to 1 million.
Sure.
Instagram took 2.5 months to get to 1 million. Even ChatGPT that all of us are shouting about took 5 days to get to 1 million.
Yes.
And Threads got to 40 million in another 24 hours.
But
The
but
man had
but
the right to be worried. Yes.
people say that, right? But this is the thing about stats, right? I think a lot of people pretend and lie. Here, let me explain my case. Number
Okay.
one, OpenAI was actually working for 7 years before they got to ChatGPT. So I would argue it took them 7 years to get to a million. Facebook is a 20-year-old company that has built lots of platforms. In fact, how did they get to 40 million in 24 hours? They did it because they could leverage Instagram, they could leverage Facebook, they could leverage WhatsApp, right? They're leveraging all of these platforms to create an onboarding experience that's almost a one-click experience. Most founders, you can dream of doing the same thing, but unless you have a base, you couldn't do the same thing. So to me, it's easy to describe them as doing 40 million in a day. But I think it's 20 years in the making, and they're just leveraging their platforms. That's what they're doing.
All that one I told you, Lekan, they
It's the
got
truth.
40 million. I know from the tech point of view, it's all about bragging rights, but I hear you 100%. But does Twitter have something to worry about?
100%. I mean, Twitter's biggest issue to worry about is what Zuckerberg knows well is advertising, right? And taking this platform, this model, right? Lots of people have been doing this now. Mastodon is out there, Post News, Artifact from the founders of Instagram, in fact, Mike Krieger, and it's funny, right? Artifact, if you go take a look at that product, it's kind of a Twitter competitor built by the guys who built Instagram. Now Facebook has gone and built Thread that's basically a copy of that because those guys left the company. So, to me, this is all people seeing an opportunity in Twitter's lack of focus, right? As Twitter really, even before Elon took over Twitter, Twitter did not really have product velocity. And so what people have seen for a while is this opportunity to go take over part of their ad revenue. And now he's left a little bit of an opening. When you fire these many people on your team, what you do is you leave yourself open where the product isn't moving fast enough. So I think if he just focuses on what he needs to do, Twitter will be fine. I think right now it's just they're being distracted. If they focus and double down, Twitter will be fine.
All right. For those of you watching us live, yeah, I heard some of you saying that it's echoing. Is it okay now? Are you guys hearing us fine? Otherwise, I may just tell Lekan to even get out of Clubhouse, and then Clubhouse guys can still hear us. It just won't be there. So if that will help the echoing, please, guys, as you are watching us, feel free to post your comments. I'm going to see it in the chat room, and I'll respond or give you a shout out. I see you. They say it's fine now. Okay. Warren Hunter, good to see you. Apostle John Tuban, good to see you guys. We are just starting our amazing interview with my friend and my guest here. Okay. Now let's get to the more interesting business side of it. This a surge of threads. What do you think this means for the social media industry? Because the truth is, whether it's been 40 years in the making or not, this is unprecedented. Yeah, it is true. They are all 20 years in the making. But when they came out, they did 40 million. The other guys came out, it took them a year to do a million. So two get two. You understand what I'm saying? Even everybody took years, but the day they came out is what we are counting. So what does this mean? Is this just another fad? All these things come out every time. And then some of them die off. Do you think threads is another fad, or you think this is a serious deal about to go down?
Hard to say. I think there are many ways to look at that thread. At least, again, here we are prognosticating after 24 hours. I think first, from a content creator perspective, if you are a content creator, I think you have to look at this as nothing short of a new opportunity to build yourself a brand or a new following. It's a new platform. It's the first, it's brand new, 24 hours in. You have to really figure out what niche can you carve and how can you build sort of a notoriety for yourself on a new platform that's untapped. We're at the moment where there are no real bots in there. There's no scheduled posts, nothing of the sort. So you, as an early kind of user of the platform, you really have an opportunity to kind of stand out. That's, I think, one way to think about this. A second opportunity to really think about with this platform is that it's moved, they grew to 40 million in 24 hours because we're at a moment where everyone is paying attention to social. Whether you're a business person, you're a brand, you're an individual content creator, or just a consumer, everyone is paying attention to these things. And so as soon as the new one comes out, curiosity, whatever it is that draws people to these things, um, you have to look at it as one of these things where it's the zeitgeist. It's a moment where we all hear about it. The natural inclination is to just jump in and be a part of it. Whether it will stay at that level of sort of interest is open to be seen. If you look at just what happened this weekend with ChatGPT, they're cresting now. All of a sudden, you're not seeing the same level of growth. I think it was 10% decline in usage for ChatGPT after what, 7-ish months that it had been growing. So at this moment where, okay, Facebook comes out and they do something at 40 million in the first day, most likely that kind of trajectory tapers off at some point. And so I think for most of us that are watching this thing, it's a new moment, interesting, it's exciting. But let's remember, it's Mr. Zuckerberg. My prediction, in about 2 weeks, the honeymoon phase is over. People will now start reading the details of the privacy statements, and all of a sudden people will come after him for he's taking our data, he's doing this, he's doing that. It's the same trend all over again. So be excited, but be cautious at the same time.
All right. Well, guys, for those of you who are watching us at home, if what we are talking about sounds like a Greek to you, there's a new app that just came out. It's called Threads. It was launched by Instagram. It's like a sister to Instagram, but it works like Twitter. It's the fastest growing app ever, regardless of what Lekan says about how many years it took them to come out. They unveiled it yesterday, and by today, within 24 hours, they have 40 million users. It works like Twitter, okay, like a basic Twitter. Even it doesn't have as many functionalities as Twitter. So you may want to check it out. I encourage you, go to your app store, download it, and create your account, because today is the second day. They released it yesterday evening. So it's just about 1 day old. And the reason why I'm recommending it for those of you who are my fans and who are friends out there is that you want to be in on the ground floor of a new app. You can get ahead faster, particularly if you have been struggling on apps like Twitter. Exactly. Now is a level playing field. You can become a champion just like anybody else. That's why I love it. For instance, my own Twitter account, I've got about 41,000 people there, has been politicized. I use it a lot to fight for Peter Obi, and it's become like a lot of my followers, if not more than 70% of them, they are Peter Obi fans, right? And then so all we do there is talk politics. So it's difficult to do business there now. So this Threads basically gives someone like me a new lease of life. So I can start a whole new account there and build it as a business account without politics or all of that there. So guys, that's what we are talking about. If you haven't downloaded it, go get your own Threads. It is still free. All right. Okay. Let's you are basically known as an expert, at least to me, until I started seeing your other competencies and expertise. You are known as somebody who has a passion for startups. You help young startups, especially the ones that are not being given the space or who are not visible to the so-called big founders. You are creating a platform for them. Can you take a little bit of time to tell us a little bit what is F3 Ventures and how are you using it to help young founders out there?
Sure. F3. So F3 started out as something I called, I was really calling it first checks in the beginning. So sometime maybe 2 years ago, sometime during the pandemic, I started doing a little bit of angel investing when I was living in Chicago, and I realized that very, very quickly, I realized that money really wasn't, at least the money I had was not going to be enough to do much. Um, but I enjoyed sort of talking to founders and helping kind of give other people the advice that I didn't get when I was starting out. So fast forward till today, what is F3? F3 is sort of three things. I describe it as number one, the place where you find your first believers. There's this great video. If you Google Derek Sievers on YouTube, you'll find it's a dancing man video where um, this guy was dancing and he's basically showing you how a movement gets started. And the idea is the movement starts when one person gets up and starts doing a silly dance in the video, then a second person does. And over time, it grows. But until you get that first person to get up and dance with you, you're just a lone crazy person. And when you think of startups, these startups are literally that. It's a crazy person with an idea until you get one person to believe in it. And then the thing grows. The way I look at it is F3, we want to find lone crazy people in faraway places that people don't pay attention to. And we want to be your first true believer, whether that's in just validating your idea, helping you think through it, or helping you find capital. Number two, I describe F3 as the first talent agency for undiscovered talent in the startup world. What I mean by that is that if you think about another industry where crazy individuals get brought into an environment and they're given resources that they're helped with resources to help develop them. It happens typically in sports, media, and entertainment because they have an agent that's able to introduce them to the right people. And so the way we think about it is that F3 needs to have a place to find people wherever they are currently, help validate them, and then introduce them to the people they need to get their company off the ground. And then the third portion of F3 is we refer to F3 as founders, funders, and friends. Because my theory is that every founder needs those three things around them in order to be successful. You, the founder, need to level up your skills. Then we need to connect you with funders who can help you. And that's not always venture capital or that type of money. Sometimes it's a bank loan. Sometimes it's credit card. Sometimes it's friends and family. But we want to help you understand the right type of capital for the business you're trying to build. And then the third thing is this broad network of friends, which can be service providers. It can be your first co-founders. It could be your first employees. But the idea is between your founders, funders, and friends, that's the circle that helps get your business off the ground. And so F3 is all three things. First place to get your true believers. Two, a talent agency for undiscovered founders. And three, the place to connect with this broader network that you need to build your business. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry, I muted myself too. I think when I muted, there's no echo. So, just on the funny side for me, I noticed, because I thought it was a mistake initially, but I noticed that you always write F3 with a small f. Why is that? Is there any story behind that? I thought it was
so
funny.
Funny enough, one of the companies I worked for a company called Turnstone. And we always did that at the company, and everybody always thought it was bad grammar. But what I discovered was it made people read things more closely. And so, I call it the levitating chair. If you're describing a product to someone and you put something that's unexpected in there, people tend to pay more attention. So one of the things I've done is I've looked for ways to introduce things that appear out of place, and then you find out that people actually pay more attention. So I use that all the time. You're muted again.
Sorry, I need to keep remembering to unmute myself. I said it worked because I was paying attention. I was thinking about it. Initially, I thought it was a mistake. Then I saw it when you wrote it again, and I saw the other document. I'm like, no, this is deliberate. Now it's in my head. Now I'm thinking about F3. Awesome. Also, that's a great marketing stuff there. All right, let's get into the startup chain, because I'm expecting a lot of people who are into startups. In other words, those who are starting businesses, ultimately at some point looking for funding, to find your interview as a classic case for them. So I'm going to get straight into that and dwell a bit more about that. All right. So, so what are some of the exciting, most exciting developments in AI that entrepreneurs and startups should be aware of?
Sure. So, I think the way we're looking at AI right now, at least in the broader tech ecosystem, is that AI is the next platform shift, right? So we went from you could say mainframes at some point, personal computers to the internet to cloud, and then you could say after cloud, this is really the next revolution, right? And I skipped mobile in there somewhere, but basically this is the next revolution, and this one has built upon everything before, right? You need the cloud, you need data, you need all these things. And so the opportunity I think today that everyone should pay attention to with AI is that it is democratizing things. At the same time, it is speeding up things. And it's probably the greatest reset for a founder to find an opportunity to build something of value, right? At the same time, it also provides possibly the biggest threat to the existing systems that existed. What I mean by that is a couple of things. Number one, if you're a founder, your ability to go create something that is differentiated and unique and creates immediate value is there. But the ability for your competitor to see it and duplicate it tomorrow is also there. I'm going to declare today that one of the biggest sort of knowns in startup land is that execution trumps ideas, right? It is, if you go to any investor today, they will tell you
Mm, mm.
execution is more important than ideas. But I'm going to declare tonight that that is now dead, or at least you have to question that. And here's my theory. In a world where anybody can duplicate anything overnight, does execution matter as much as unique ideas that have been well thought through? You could argue both are now equally important, because as a founder, if all you do is execute on a dumb idea that you didn't think through far enough, all you're doing is what I call free R&D for everybody else. Now, in the execution, you will learn. So don't get me wrong, execution is still critical, because ideas without execution, we all know, is hallucination. But ideas alone and execution alone is not enough. Now you actually have to do both. You actually have to think better than your competitors. You have to strategically think and put things in the right order, and learn to keep certain things behind the scenes as you're executing, because you need to find these advantages. And so it's really become harder. So at the same time, it is easier than ever to start a company. I believe you can start any company for under $1,000 today. But at the same time, it is probably going to be harder to scale any company, because while scaling, you've seen with Facebook, can go to 40 million in a day. You probably will need more money, and I think more attention is the issue today, right? Anything you bring out today, anybody can copy and duplicate and bring out. So people with deeper pockets, people with bigger networks, people who've already built a community probably have an advantage over a startup that just wants to execute. And so we're entering a moment where you have to actually think about all the pieces of the pie. What is your marketing and sales strategy? What is your distribution strategy? What is your funding strategy? What is your product development strategy? All of these things almost at the start of your company. The good news is you can strategize with an AI LLM that can help you think through all those things in 2 days. So you don't have to spend 6 years doing it. All I'm suggesting is that if you don't do it today, you will die faster.
Wow, that's it. So you are basically saying it's a paradigm shift, and I'm hearing you. Before, the emphasis is on who can execute better. Okay,
Absolutely.
how can you execute there? But now you are correct. The execution time is getting shorter and shorter and faster
Right.
and more efficient, even because now you have AI tools. It's like saying you want to write a book, right? Now the question is not about executing that book, because you can get that book done in 1 hour. The
Correct.
question is, what is the quality of your book? What is the idea behind that book? I never saw it that way before, but you are very correct. It's a paradigm shift now. I think people like me are going to be winners. So those of us with crazy ideas, because now Our problem is executing before. You are correct. Now that I think about it, you're correct. Execution is no longer the major issue, at least for most things. Because if you want to do brainstorming, you want to do market survey, you want to do all of that, a few
That's
prompts. Yeah. I wrote a business plan in under 10 minutes the other day. 10 minutes. Something that would have taken me maybe 6 weeks because I had to do research, I had to do justification. I was just asking ChatGPT and he was pulling it up and pulling it up, doing all of that. So now, guys, I hope you guys got that because the man is speaking with precision of a technical guy. Let me break it down for you guys. What he has basically said is that now it is about the quality of your ideas, not necessarily the quality of your execution, because you have too many assistants to help you execute now, to do your MVP. He was sharing a tool with me. I hope you share a bit about that tool where somebody can use to iterate their MVP in record time. So now you can go from idea to MVP in less than a week. It is the idea that counts. I love that. I hope those of you out there who are thinking of going to business, it is now about how is your idea going to change the industry. All right, let's go to one of the key questions that you guys always ask, or that because you are in the area of helping people look for funds, you have also invested yourself. So what are the key factors that you think contribute to a successful startup in today's market?
It's interesting, right? So we just talked about ideas. Ideas matter. Superior ideas that have been well thought through and reasoned and put in the right sequence, right? That is one. A second one is an understanding of the market that is non-conventional. I think, for example, back to sort of execution being commoditized. Take these image generation models. There are probably 100 startups doing image generation out there. Most of us probably know the most famous ones or the writing ones, but there are like 100 of them, right? So, you know what I mean? Like the idea to have one is not unique, right? The execution is not unique. The people that win end up being the ones that think unconventionally. When you think of genius, it's taking in, to me, my definition of genius is you hear the same thing everybody else does, but somehow you reason it differently, right? I'll give you an example back to Instagram. When Instagram was growing, we had a similar problem where Instagram, there were so many photo sharing apps. There were copycats. But what Instagram did that was really unique was Instagram recognized that they were thinking about the whole solution. So for example, what they realized was most photo sharing apps back then, if you remember, we were still on 3G phones. So uploading took a long time. Well, most people did was they simply copied an app that said, take a picture, edit it. When you're done, write a little caption, hit send. And then what happened? You waited and waited and waited, and then you waited and waited and waited for it to upload. What Instagram did was they started uploading as soon as you took the photo. They started uploading while you were selecting your filters, while you were typing your message, all the parts that really interested you. While you were doing that, they were already loading the file. And then on the server, what they did was they put together the image, the text, and put it all together there. So by reversing the order in which things happened, it was magical. People were like, this one is just faster. These guys are better. They weren't. They just reversed the design of the order. That's a unique insight that became $1 billion insight. So my thing to founders today is when I ask any founder, what are you doing? What are you building? I'm looking for the unique hacks, the insights that they have that I haven't heard from anybody with a similar idea. Then the final thing comes back to execution. I lied a little bit when I said execution doesn't matter. Execution still matters if you have what we call product velocity. The best founders today are shipping early and they're shipping often. What that means
is... Wait.
Okay.
Product velocity. Oh yeah, break it down.
Product velocity is...
They don't know what that is. Yes.
How quickly are you shipping updates to your product? So you tell me you launch today. In a week from now, what is the new update? A week from now, what is the next update? And generally, if what you're doing is you release a product, you talk to your customers, you learn something, within a week, you've updated it. That is a team that has product velocity. And that team will probably beat any copycat. They will beat anybody else because they're learning quickly and they're executing quickly, right? So your thinking has to be good, but your execution has to be even better too.
Okay, so product velocity, guys. Start to Google that one. Ask ChatGPT. What is product velocity? It's talking about the ability to iterate, your ability to keep updating it and staying ahead of the competitors that are biting at your leg, basically. Because as you bring it out there, there's really no originality. It is you that add that unique perspective. Awesome. I think you are correct, guys. We are live with Lekan Bashua, the founder of F3 Ventures and a product management manager at Google Inc. Before we go on, I wanted to bring a little thing to your like a kind of commercial break. We have an event coming up on Tuesday. It's called the AI Business Summit. It's actually my very first one, and I've lined up 12 of the most prolific and most what I call thought leaders in this new revolution of the AIs. We are going to be having it next week, Tuesday. We have 12 of them that are going to be coming in to speak on different niches. And where is it? Let me pull up the. So I have to be up there. Okay, sorry about that. We have this event coming up on Tuesday. I'm going to play a short video for you that summarizes what you're going to be getting, and you can go register and be part of the fun. Here we go. Awesome. Hopefully, I see you guys next week, Tuesday. Lekan is going to be there and he's going to be speaking for 75 minutes on the monetization part of this from the point of view of founders. How do you get that money? How do you use AI to get that money? Be there. All right. Thank you so much for those of you just joining us from all over the world. We are live with Mr. Lekan Bashua, the founder of F3 Ventures. Okay, let's go to the next question here. Let's talk about this one. How do you approach funding for startups, and what are some common challenges entrepreneurs face in this process? Because everybody tells us, oh, we can get that money, there's money out there, they're funding people, but it is tougher because we don't know better. But you have been on both sides. You have invested. You have also listened to a lot of people asking you to help them get investment. So you have a unique perspective. So what do you think, what is the best way you're going to advise those watching us right now, especially that young man who has a great idea, who is already struggling with his startup? What are the common challenges that they face, and how do they deal with this? Go ahead.
Yeah, so this is part of why I started F3. I think there are a couple of things we should put out there. Number one, I think a lot of founders fall into multiple categories. One category is founders that probably should not be raising money for the type of company that they're building, or founders who have not sufficiently hit milestones that they're ready for funding. I see that a lot, right? And typically that's just a mismatch between the type of business you're building and the type of capital. Every business needs capital, but not every business needs venture capital or angel investment. Some type of business make sense for that, but there's so many others. I think right now we're tracking at F3 about 23 different sources of capital. There is crowdfunding, there is angel investment, there is credit cards, there is financing of what they call factoring. There's so many different types of funding. My point is, and oh, by the way, just sell to customers and make money by selling a product that people want to buy, right? So the point is, mismatch of capital to the type of idea. That's one. Two, a lot of people are approaching VCs without thinking from their side of the table, right? So one of the things that's very helpful as a founder is to understand the person you're trying to pitch to. Number one, I tell people, just assume the person is greedy first before they are biased. Meaning, whenever you're pitching, there's three things, right? You can use logos, ethos, and pathos, right? You can use logic, you can use passion, right? And reasoning. And one of the challenges, I think, for a lot of founders is they think passion is going to get the other person excited. When you use logic that is just purely financial, if you were the other person on the other side of the table, would you give your money to this crazy idea from a person you've never met, that you don't know, who comes to you and says, I need $1 million for this thing that's unproven? Probably no. So you have to kind of break things down in a way that makes sense for people, that a greedy person would go, oh my goodness, of all the crazy ideas I'm hearing out there, this is the one I know I want to put my money in. And you have to make that case. And generally that means you don't get that money on day one. You don't get it on day two. You have to build a relationship to get to that money. That's two. Three, what I find is one of the challenges for founders is that you're approaching a market that is just not big enough, right? Or it's a market that the investor you're talking to just has no real interest. And the sooner you can either figure out if it's a market size problem or an interest problem, the better off you are. I always say to founders, the best thing, the only thing better than a no, than a yes, here's the check, is a fast no. The worst thing for a founder is to be sort of dating an investor that never materializes. So you want to figure out, is the market I'm going for big enough to get the type of returns I want, that an investor expects? And oh, by the way, am I building the type of business that makes sense for that thing? And if you can figure that out soon enough, you know what path to take. Another one is knowing the actual investor and what they are interested in. Most people try to get known and they put their information out there. But you as a founder have to figure out how to understand what that person likes to invest in, and find out in what cycle they are in terms of capital deployment, right? So if the person is at the last stages of capital deployment, they're probably thinking of keeping that money for their sure bets. They want to double down. If they're very early, they might be more spray and play. Are you going to people that are professional angel investors or people who dabble part-time? I have a full-time job. I do it part-time, but I sort of sit somewhere maybe in between. You have people who, I have some friends who this is their full-time thing that they do all day long. That person is going to invest very differently than a person who is investing because they meet you and you're describing an industry that they know well, and they're like, you know what, I get it, I'm going to put money in, or they know you personally, right? So there are all these different challenges we see with founders, but I would say above all of them, the thing that I'm trying to tackle at F3 is to help founders realize three things. Number one, do your homework and your research. Have everything you need to do done fine. That gets you past hurdle number one. Hurdle number two is once you've done that, then target the right people. Hurdle number two. Then number three is basically a numbers game. You need to date 100, maybe 200 people to get to that number, right? And
wait, they need to date. I need to understand what that is. They need to date how many people?
Startup investing, like looking for capital in a startup is like the most promiscuous dating situation.
Don't let their pastors hear that too. You are telling them to date a lot of people.
You have to.
Don't let their pastors hear.
You have to be the most promiscuous, politician you can find. No matter what they ask you, you stay on message, you tell your story, you describe what you're trying to build, and recognize that even after you do all of that, some people just may not like you or your business, and that's fine. Just get a no quickly and move on to the next. I think if founders can do those three things, you're much better off. And then maybe let me mention one last thing is I'm not convinced that every business needs capital today. Back to the AI stuff we've been talking about. I'm not convinced every business needs capital today the same way. I think any startup can be built for less than $1,000, depending on how you craft it. So if for $1,000 you can get off the ground, those first stages where you're begging people for money, just fund yourself and get to stage 2 where you've proven something material. And then that path to funding becomes a lot easier. I think more people should follow that direction.
I see. So you are saying it's not everybody looking for investors that are really should be doing that. And I think I agree with you. Because funny enough, I've been doing a lot of startups. I've never really looked for an investor before. I just fund my stuff from my operations. And then when you start hearing, oh, there is a funding available somewhere, that's when you do more than yourself. And you go and enter the kind of trouble I entered into because you assume you will get this money. And now you don't. Unlike all the startups have done where you have always focused on trying to raise at least the capital to get it going initially for yourself, which is why we went to all this. We operate a lot in a place like JVZoo. All right, I think that's it's a good advice. But I wanted to address this point a little for me, the different funding options, because we assume everybody out there knows. So if you can just enumerate some of them, especially the ones that may not be so obvious to that guy who is working on his system right now and is trying to create something. Those are the ones I have a passion for. That is where the Mark Zuckerberg is hiding of tomorrow. That young man in Isaleko, that young man in Yaba, or somewhere in Omaha, Nebraska, who is just doing stuff on his system, but has no clue about how to get the little money to start going. Can you go into that for them a little bit? Go ahead.
At its most basic level, right? It comes back to what are you building and how do you craft that early product? If you can craft your early product in a way where you minimize the number of things you have to prove, you don't need as much money. That's number one to me. Number two is figuring out how you're going to fund your own personal lifestyle while you build that early product, right? So typically to me, again, where if you're in Yaba, it is different than if you're in Ukraine, different than if you're in Vladivostok or San Francisco. But generally, I think you can start with 1,000, 5,000, 25,000, depending on where you are. If you're in San Francisco, it's maybe 25,000. If you're in Lagos, it's 1,000. But my point is, if you craft your product and what you're trying to prove in a very manageable way, you can build the first product with no code. To me, the three secrets today are no code, automation, and AI. You can build a product very quickly with those three technologies, and you can prove something material, which is, do people want this thing? How badly do they want it? How quickly can I get to customers that matter? Can I prove that this thing is creating value for them? There are these 4 or 5 things you can prove very quickly. And I think if you can craft that first and figure out what those things are and then go build it quickly in a matter of weeks and put it out there and validate those things, then at least you have the beginnings of a story to then go to the next stage, which is to go find that first round of capital. And the first round is typically what we call friends and family. And there are even some funds now. There's one in Chicago, there's one through Techstars, there's a bunch of them now that are acting in that first check category, which is sub $50,000, where if you can prove something is useful to a certain amount of customers that want it, and you can build that initial product, you can usually get to that first round. In fact, one of the best angel investors out there right now, a guy called Jason Calacanis, he runs a fund called the Launch Fund. He's doing $25,000. You enter his program, you basically go and you practice, you build your first product inside of his ecosystem for, I think it's like 6 weeks, and then best companies get $25,000. So there are many ways you can get to that first 25 to 50K. You then from that first 25 to 50K, you build kind of an initial product that then you can take to market and go prove that customers want it. And so to me, that is the first thing, is to scale down, niche down to something that you know you can prove in a couple of weeks, and go build the first product, and ideally do it without anybody's money. If you have to drive Uber for 2-3 months to do it, drive Uber. If you need to go to your cousin and get a small advance, do that. Or just work any part-time job and pay for those first things. If you build with no code, if you build with AI, and you're building typically with automation, you can build almost any product in a matter of weeks and get that initial thing built without a lot of money.
Well, a lot of big talk right there. You can build this thing in a matter of weeks without a lot of money. Now you're going to break that one down, because that
Okay.
is a big question. In fact, I put that one in capital letter. Okay, as you can see, I'm serious here. A lot of young people all over the world, all right, they have these great ideas, but because they don't know that there are ways and strategies for them to be able to bring out their MVP, because to start looking for seed, even investment, really all you need is an MVP and the vision on how to actualize it, right? Many of them, they are busy looking for millions and thousands to be able to build that MVP. But I know in the era of AI, and also in your own experience with the no code team, please, I would like you to take us through this. And guys out there, this might be the most important part of the interview, especially for those of you who are aspiring founders, who are struggling with creating your MVP because of lack of money. You want to pay attention here, because somebody called me a few days ago and was telling me how he wants me to borrow him $20,000 because he's hiring 4 developers to help him bring out his MVP. And I'm like, are you sure you need 4 developers to help you get your MVP out? That you need to go learn about no code funding and no code web development, or go figure out how I can do it. But I'm not technical. I do the business side of tech. So you are here. Break it down for us, like in a way, like I'm 16-year-old. How I have an idea in my head. What are the step-by-step things I can do to get out my MVP in 2 ways? The no-code strategy, where I don't have to do any coding if I don't know how to do coding, or with an AI or AI tools that I can go. I'm going to give you all the time you need. Please help us break this part down very, very deeply. Thank you so much.
So, a few things. I think we in tech have done a bad job of making it seem like building applications are really complicated. Sure, building them at like Google scale, where they're for billions of people, that's complicated. But getting an MVP should not feel like it's a chore. Traditionally, there's what they call the MVC model, model, view, control. If you understand this basic idea, you can initially get kind of a way to frame your idea. So model, view, control simply refers to what we call a data model first, which is, think of it as the spreadsheet that powers your app. Now, it's not really a spreadsheet. Typically, it's a database, but just think of an Excel spreadsheet or Google Sheets spreadsheet. That is your M portion of MVC model, right? So what is the data model behind the product? And I'll come back to that. Then the V portion is view. What is the interaction? What is the UI? What is the thing that people will click or touch within your product? And then C is control. What is the logic? What is the set of rules that when they do this, this is supposed to happen? If you think from that perspective, just with that little bit of knowledge, now imagine your favorite app, right? When you go to Thread or you go to Facebook or any app, when you click on it, what's the first thing you do? You're touching the UI. That is what we called the view portion, right? When you press something, something happens. That is the control portion. That is the logic. That is telling the application what to do. And then what happens is when something changes and you see a new picture or you see some new text, that is calling the database. It's going to the back and it's pulling something forward. That is the model part, right? So let's break it down. If you were going to build a basic application, let's say Facebook, you might say, okay, on Facebook, I have this page in which there's there are pictures, there's some text. Let's start with my profile, right? If I was building my profile page, I would have a picture of me. I would have my first name, my last name, maybe my title, my email address. Then it would have posts. this concept called a post, which would be maybe a picture plus some text of things that I'm sharing. If you think of that in this MVC mode that we just described, the M is the model. So the data model is saying, oh, for each user of the app, they will have a first name, they will have a last name, they will have their email address, they might have a password. And then attached to each of these users is a concept of a post. Each post will consist of a title, perhaps a photo, some text, right? So you can start thinking of, how would I put that into a spreadsheet? You would say, okay, now I'm going to open up a spreadsheet, and I would say, first line is, the first column would be name. Then beside name, you would say, okay, email address. Then you might have password, right? And so that begins your data model, right? Then you say, okay, I'm going to create another tab in my spreadsheet, and that's going to be this thing called a post. And inside of that post, you would say title, photo, text, right? And then you can start connecting them with your logic, right? This is back to our control portion. So, hey, each user has this thing called a post that can connect to each other. And then eventually you go design your UI, and you would say, okay, when they press this button called post, it opens up a new post that is this empty box. After they type, they hit send. It's going to then go ahead and send it to all of their followers. So the point is, if you start thinking in this model of MVC, or model view control, you can really start to break an app down almost as layers. Think of it as, what is the back-end data that I need to power this whole thing? What is the front end that people will touch? And then ultimately the middle part, the control, is when I touch this thing on the front end, what does it do on the back end? What calculation is it doing? What operation is it doing? Who is it sending it to? Is it sending an email? What is happening? And so if you just think of anything you're trying to build with that basic kind of framework, you can build almost anything. So let's park that for a second. Now you might say, well, I don't know how to code. The good news is, if you think of coding, I call it syntax. All coding is today used to be even more complicated before. The version of coding that most of us do today, in writing a whole bunch of funny characters on a screen, is simply what we call an abstraction. It's a layer on top of machine language, right? That's even more complicated. And so today, there's another layer on top of that called no code. And AI is almost a layer on top of that as well. So the no code layer says, let me take this basic thing that was a bunch of text, and let me turn it into a bunch of clicks. So if you want to build something with no code today, think of doing PowerPoint, or think of using Excel, right? As long as you can point and click in all these tools, in those tools today, when you're pointing and clicking, it's really just code behind all of that stuff. Except now you can code visually by connecting this thing to that thing. Then there are automation tools that basically take the same concept of visual stuff, but now when you connect these visual things, you're giving it rules. If this happens, then this should happen. When I click on this, I want it to send data here, and you can connect all these different things together. So
hold on one second, so that I know you're going deep, and those who speak your language, they are hearing you. Can you mention a couple of the tools? And by the way, before we go forward, I've been getting back channel messages, people wanting to know how can they contact you, especially your F3 project. So whether it's a website or email you want to give me, something that is available publicly, you can send it to me privately. I'll put it on the screen. I didn't want to forget those of you have been asking. So if you can take a pause and maybe mention a few of those tools, or give them where they can, what search words they can use to find it if they don't have it readily available now, so that they can follow it. Because I trust me, there are guys who are making notes now who want to go execute what you are saying. So please, hope I didn't interrupt your thoughts. Go back to it. Thank you.
No, not at all. So tools, if you think of what we described, MVC, model view control, on the model side, where you can start kind of creating your spreadsheet, my go-to tool that I tell everybody to go to, just as a place to start, you can use one of two things. You can go to Google Sheet. Now, I'm going to say this time I mentioned a Google product. Google, I'm not trying to sort of, Google didn't ask me to come sell Google products, but Google Sheets is one of those basic tools that you can use for this stuff. And then the other one that I love personally is called Airtable. Again, just a tool that I love, but Airtable is one of those deceptive tools. It looks like a spreadsheet, is very basic, but it's a spreadsheet that's really a database. And what's great about it is you can start to sort of think about all of your logic in there first. So you can say, okay, your model, your data model. So you go in there and you start creating these tables and you say, okay, each of these columns means X, Y, and Z, first name, last name, email address, all the stuff you need to connect, you need, and start doing that in Airtable. Then you say, okay, now that I have that, I need to start thinking about my logic. One of the tools that you can go to is called Zapier, Zapier. Zapier is a no-code way of stitching a bunch of tools together. So you go to Zapier and you say, okay, if this happens in, say, for example, you tell them to sign up on your website. But when they sign up on your website, you need to take what they've done and now you need to send it to Google Sheets to store. So then you sign up, you type in on the website, and you say, as soon as they hit submit, send it to Google Sheet. And you go to Zapier and you'd say, you basically create a Zap that would allow you to connect your website to Google Sheets. And so you can start building your logic in a tool like that. Then you say, okay, I have these things now. I've got my data sitting somewhere and I have my website. Now I want some more fine-grained control. I want to build a UI that makes this stuff happen. What's interesting is depending on what you're building for your MVP, you might even use an interface designer that's built inside Airtable to just build your first version and go test your first assumption. Another thing you can do is there's a tool called Glide Apps, GLIDEAPPS.com. Glide Apps is a no-code app builder for desktop and mobile and tablet, Android and iOS. In fact, they use what they call PWA, progressive web apps, which are basically, they look like applications. They can actually store data and all this stuff, but they basically don't need even to go to an app store. So you can test something without submitting it to an app store. You can just send it directly to your users. But you use something like Glide where you can then you basically use it to build your interface. So you can say, hey, instead of my website, I want them to go to this app of mine and I want them to register. They register. Once they're registered, you want to take them to a page where you want them to see your Facebook app, where they see their profile, they see these posts, and you can literally build that in Glide without writing a single line of code. A basic application, right? Again, it's going to vary depending on what you're building, but you can literally get started in one afternoon. That is what I think is so empowering about these technologies is if you think of the process today, you can have an idea in the morning, sit with one of these language models, iterate with it on your idea in the afternoon, really test out your idea with the language model, thinking about users and markets and use cases and all these things, and then sit in the evening and literally go to use Airtable, use Glide, and within 3 hours you could have a prototype built. You could literally do what I'm describing in one day without having used any of these apps. Now, realistically, to get a good prototype out, you might spend 4 weeks. I don't know. But my point is, you might have spent years having an idea without being able to execute. My point with these tools is you can execute today in a matter of days to weeks, if not just hours, without necessarily knowing how to code. And that's what's really empowering. Oh, you're muted. Uh-oh, I still can't hear you. Oh. Ah, I'll just wait. I'm gonna try to push a meeting. That is, I'm just gonna push a meeting here. There's cell phone 404. if you're able to post the next question, I'd be happy to do that while you sort out the mic issue. I take it AI can't fix everything yet. Let's see. Let me hop back on CH and see if I see anybody on there.